Good evening. My name is Jay Rothman. I am the host of the show. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Live. Welcome back to the studio. Again, I'm the host of the show. My name is Jay. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Live. I'm going to introduce this evening. We have Jeff Pisano coming in from Nashville, Tennessee. We have Evis Love Heath, the man of the land from down under. He calls Australia home. And of course, we have Josh Richard coming in from Southern California. In any event, welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Hey, brothers. I've connected. Hopefully there's no glitch in the system this week. We've already had a couple of little tech difficulties. How's it looking anyway?
You're looking better than you were last night.
Oh, thanks, brother.
You're crystal clear. I just want to make sure you're adjusted so that your head's not cropped at the top. But definitely there's something happening with our platform tonight where it looks like we're having trouble streaming into LinkedIn at the same time. However, I want to welcome our viewers to the show. This evening, if you should hear something that you like or love, we invite you to tap your love button on your monitor and light us up. If you should have any questions or comments for us, please drop it down into your comment section. And we'll do our best to acknowledge any questions that come forward. At the same time, tonight's episode is number 80. I don't know if there's any spiritual connection between the number 80, but it sure feels pretty profound to me in this moment. Tonight's show is about when the fear strikes, the food spikes. And and so it's nice. Tonight is a topic that I am absolutely passionate about for a number of reasons. And I'm going to invite Ev, since you're down. Well, I'm going to move you up here. Yeah, I love how you kick us off. I'm going to invite you to warm us up on tonight's topic on when the fear strikes, the food spikes. What do we mean by that? What did we talk about in the production meeting this week?
Big topic, my brothers and sisters. And as always, here from the land down under, thank you on episode number 80. Very important number, actually, Jay the Rock, man. The 8, that's that infinity, isn't it? It's that Ouroboros. It's that past, present, and future coexisting all at once. We're in Scorpio series, my brothers and sisters, and we're walking into the dark. Does the darkness sound like your transformation at the moment, my brothers and sisters? You know, I've been helping a lot of people over these years get into the best shape of their lives. And one of those crucial tools that I see all of these beautiful people being able to transform within their lives is the power of food. Is food your poison or is it your medicine? You know, it's funny because over this last couple of decades in particular, I mean, we don't even have to look at the stats anymore, my brothers and sisters. You can walk down your local shopping mall and without judgment, showing nothing but love and compassion, you can see people are sick, man. You can see they're eating the wrong foods. You can see that there may be a little bit of trauma that's causing them to go in a particular direction that is not serving them up till this point within their lives. So what happens over these years, and particularly when I've been helping these people on their transformation, I started to see that, like a lot of these people that are holding some of this weight within their lives, a lot of it has been held on because of trauma. It may have been held on because of abuses. It may have been held on because of little things like self-doubt within their lives as children. So all we see the body really signaling as a messenger is that this person may need to go in another direction to start eating or consuming something that is actually high vibratory food. And my brothers and sisters, we're simply consumers of information. So you've got to think about what is the information through food that you are currently putting into your system. Has it become a tool, or is it time to be living in it as a temple? We're going to answer some of these questions tonight on Real Men Real Talk Live. So I'm looking forward to diving in deep again with my brothers.
Oh, yeah. Great topic. Let's do it.
One of the things, Ev, you mentioned is food. Is it your poison or is it your medicine? And for me, I've always had a very, very, for most of my life, a very, let's say, entangled and enmeshed relationship with food. For me, I never really saw it as nutrition. Although I knew it had benefits, I didn't realize how much it was impacting my overall health and wellness. And for many of us growing up, at least in the U.S., there's many factors that play into that. One is that if you grew up in a home, a culture per se, from faith-based or spiritual-based culture of sorts, you absolutely, a lot of times food is used as the central gathering for the event. It's part of, it's a massive part. Also, I learned how to use food as comfort. When I'd be stressed out, or when I'd feel sad, or when I was just not in a good place emotionally, I would use food to kind of regulate my emotions. And how many of us have that type of relationship with food? Eventually, for me, I think out of the gate, I had issues with my body image that definitely translated into food, because when I was a kid, I had a very, very, very fast metabolism. Hence, back in the 60s and 70s, I was referred to as being very skinny. And today, as skinny as I was, people would see that as actually having maybe some type of eating disorder. But it wasn't. It was that my metabolism just was really quick. But what happened is that I did everything I could to put weight on through food. And eventually that it was a mess. I was a mess. And eventually my metabolism changed in college. And then I went from being too skinny to battling the bulge on my waist, and eventually leading to a diagnosis of being, from a medical perspective, obese, pushing a 42-inch waist. And for me, food, no doubt, I had this relationship with it for self-soothing. I had this relationship with it where I knew it wasn't serving me, but I didn't know how to slow down the train. I didn't know how to slow down or change my relationship with food. And eventually it led to the obesity. And then I used the suit jacket or the sport jacket in my career, thinking that I was hiding my waist from everyone to see, because I'd always wear the suit jacket, mostly buttoned up. The only person I was fooling was myself. I'm sure everyone saw what I saw when I looked in the mirror. But at least in that moment, that's how I managed my relationship with that. What do you make of that, Josh, Richard? Can you relate?
Man, it's Jay, I fully hear you. I had a dysfunctional relationship with food too. And, when I first joined film and TV, I did gain a lot of weight because of the craft service table, and I'd walk by and grab a handful of M&Ms. And you do that 12 times in a day when you pass the table. And I gained like 30 pounds when I first got into film and TV, and because it was all those. My problem is sweets, and they were there. They were there, and in an open container. The barrier to entry was zero. And but my problem with food has been more dysfunctional in another way. I tend to I get really caught in my creative endeavors, and I get really caught in my the projects I'm working on, the things I'm doing. I get so excited, and I'm in the creative flow, and I don't stop to eat. And I don't
Mhm.
think, in my past, I didn't think about having to nourish my body. It was honestly, food was a nuisance. And then what would happen is I would, blow past a mealtime, and then when my stomach is eating itself at like 2 p.m., I finally realize I haven't had lunch, and I would go for the quickest, fastest thing at that point because I was starving. And the quickest, fastest generally isn't healthy. And I would dive into fast food. I would just, hop in the car, drive around the corner to the nearest, Wendy's, McDonald's, whatever, and just to get the food in because I was already past the point of no return. And so, yeah, for me, it was really hard to stop that creative flow and pause that creative flow and put that importance on myself and my body and what I'm putting in it, to say it's that self-care where I had to rise that high enough on my list and say, no, this is important. It's not good to just rush out and eat the junk and the crap. And so I have to put in time to make and for me, my technique now is meal prep, so that I can get in that creative flow and I'm still there. But when I get to that super starving place, there's grilled chicken breasts already in the fridge and grilled veggies that I can just pop out and reheat. So that was my workaround, for that because I love the flow. I don't want to give up the flow and stifle it, but I just had to keep tweaking my method. So
Yeah,
that was my.
I tend to go that way.
Do you?
I mean, I'll forget to eat. Like, if I'm working, if I'm in the flow, um, I might look up and I'll go, "Oh wow, I forgot to eat." And then most of the time I don't eat. I kind of go the
Wow.
other way. I'm not a food person. To me, I eat because I have to, because that's the way I stay alive. You know, and that's really the only reason why I eat. It's like it really is. It's like people ask me what are your favorite restaurants in Nashville, and I'll go, only been to two. They're both vegan restaurants, the only two vegan restaurants in Nashville. But yeah, I tend to go the other way. But when things are going on in my life, and maybe I'm upset, um, things aren't in the flow, I go the opposite way. A lot of people will go and start eating for comfort. What I do is I don't eat.
Mm.
I have my appetite just goes and I just won't eat. So that's just how I won't even be hungry. When I'm upset, maybe a little depressed, things aren't going that way, things are upsetting me. Um, I I just I'm not hungry. And I have to force myself to have
Mm.
something. So yeah, I go the opposite way. You know, uh, it, food was never a comfort thing for me.
Wow.
It really wasn't. Sometimes when I'm down, I'm Italian. I was brought up with spaghetti and meatballs, and that is probably my only comfort food
Mm.
that will uh, really, that would be my only comfort food, would be going
But
to that. Because what it really does, and what I've realized is that, when we're in a crisis or something's going on, it's really, once again, the wounded child coming up. So what did I love when I was a kid? Sunday mornings, waking up, that smell of my mother making sauce and the meatballs and sausage and all of that good stuff, and that smell in the morning was wonderful. It was beautiful, and I was a kid. So when I get to that place, what we want to do, really, what's really going on inside of us is that wounded child kicking and screaming and whatever, and we go to pacify that child instead of nurturing that child. We go to pacify it, to bring it into something familiar. So what I was taught years ago is that when we're in situations that maybe that we're releasing a lot in our life, or a lot of what we need to look at is coming up, we are asked to go and do something familiar to us that's healthy. What's not healthy is binging on food to bring us into this, to comfort the child. I go the opposite way because I am learning to nurture that child. I starve myself. So I'm not nurturing that child. I'm not even eating. So that is what we're trying to do here. Instead of going to food as the comfort, which brings us to this comfortable place of maybe I'm comforting the wounded 7-year-old.
But then, Jeff, I mean, it's no secret you've expressed on the show in the past that you were more overweight as a kid. What was the difference then between your relationship with your food then and then now? And do you think the pendulum has swung the other way?
Maybe. I don't think so. My overweight as 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I grew out of it. I grew out of it when I got to high school and started playing football, hockey, baseball, and it just it went as I grew up. I just never had that. When we were talking about this last night, I'm thinking, and I was thinking all day today, I just don't. When I get into a place, I just don't eat. It's the opposite for me. It's always been the opposite for me.
I want to shift gears here, if I may. Jeff, thank you for sharing that. I want to engage a few moments here with you, Ev, because you, I don't know what your body mass index is, but I perceive it's pretty lean. And I'm curious, have you always had a healthy relationship with food? I'm presuming you do now, based on what I see on your videos on social media. In nature, strip down a pair of shorts and some type of boulder that you're lifting and doing all kinds of
giant fallen tree that he's bench pressing.
Really?
Yeah, seriously, man.
Was your relationship with food, has it always been healthy? And if it wasn't, what was the pivot moment for you? When did you change, if in fact, when did you change your relationship with food for yourself and your health?
Yeah, look, brother, it has always been quite healthy in my sort of terms. Now that I look back on, even my childhood, there was definitely one side of the family. The old man was definitely really disciplined with what my brother and I were eating at the time. And, like I really started to look at food more so as fuel. And that was very early on in my life, because when I got to the end of high school, it would have been about 17 years old. It was the first time I picked up a dumbbell. And I knew from that point on that particular environment was not going to serve me, and I wouldn't be able to keep up with the sort of exercise that I was doing at that time if I wasn't fueling my body sufficiently. What happened after that is that I got sucked into the whole bodybuilding world, where I was programmed to believe I had to eat 6 to 8 meals a day.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. I was eating 8 meals a day, my brothers and sisters. Wow. Jeff and Josh have talked about not eating sometimes when they get into the creative process. Well, I actually just come off my fast, my 24-hour fast that I do generally on the Thursday, and come into the Friday, and I call that my #LastTheFast Friday, where I can extend out. But this is the thing, my brothers and sisters, I don't have a structure time. I don't go by a particular clock. I don't go by any scales. I don't measure shit anymore. I used to measure things absolutely religiously, crazily. I would have like probably about 5 different journals where I was taking all the calories, all the grams, doing all of the old school belief system stuff. And then I just started to be more connected with my body. So I started to fuel it what it was actually needing, not what it wanted, what it was actually needing.
Mm-hmm.
So I connected back to my body. What we've got to understand, my brothers and sisters, is that by the time we get past the years of 20 years old, our body becomes the subconscious mind. Let me say that again. The body becomes the subconscious mind. Now, this is important because I'm sure we're going to get into it shortly, that the big brands out there, my brothers and sisters, like those bodybuilding days, they were sucking me in for all the bright colors, for all the big muscle men on the front, from all of this stuff that they were selling to me that I was going out there to buy. And what ended up happening is that these brands are very intelligent. They create specific chemicals within these foods that create cells within your body that send signals up to your brain to get these neurotransmitters going out to fulfill the chemical fix of that food. Now, that's a lot to digest, my brothers and sisters. But what I'm saying is so important here is that we've got to flip the script. We've got to take back control and have that better relationship with our body and start to really connect with actually how this is actually working. We have 3 brains, my brothers and sisters. We've got one up here, we've got a very intelligent one there, and we've got one down here in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
So you could only imagine what sort of signals you're sending up to this one from down in the belly one if you're eating the processed, the engineered, the GMO foods, anything that's boxed, carton, packaged, or packed. Don't eat. Don't eat it, my brothers and sisters. Like the great Dr. Sabi said, if nature don't make it, don't take it.
Love that.
Jay the Rothman says, it's simple, but it's not easy.
I want to acknowledge Beverly Annette from the US of A. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I also, before I want to read what you just wrote here, I also want to acknowledge you for having the courage to step into your truth today and take a significant step to honor your personal choices in life. And I want to say, we will continue to hold space for you, and I know that the choice you made to exit out of your position in your career today was a very personal one for you. And we're here to acknowledge you, honor you, and let you know that you're never alone. If at any time you feel that you need to reach out as you did today, all of us welcome that on Real Men, Real Talk. She says, 14 years ago, I changed my life and health by stopping all sugar, dairy, processed foods, and gluten. I lost 67 pounds in 5 months by just eating clean. I healed many health issues, including high blood pressure, metabolic syndrome, and some of the autoimmune issues I had. It cleared brain fog and changed my life. It is possible. I am proof. I fast regularly now. I eat what I need. I no longer have wants for food. I want to, that's such a powerful statement there. I early on in tonight's broadcast that I had a toxic relationship with food. I abused food, and my body responded in a very, very, very profound way. My body got sick. I ended up with multiple medical conditions, including type 2 diabetes, heart disease, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, generalized anxiety disorder, and pulmonary artery disease. Those are just a few. And yes, it's about lifestyle, it's about environment, but it's food and nutrition has a massive role in either creating the perfect environment for disease or creating the perfect environment for healing. If I may, excuse me. When I changed my relationship with food back in 2015, I began to heal. And I too have embraced many of what was just shared by Beverly. And I also want to say I meet so many guests on the work I do in the Trails of Sedona and Hike and Heal experiences. Just met a woman just last week that shared with me that she struggles with massive anxiety. And I asked her the same question I ask all of my guests or clients that I work with. How much water do you drink every day?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, do you think it's more than 3 or 4 ounces? And of course, that was a setup question. But I knew what the answer was going to be. I absolutely knew. Because you see, I was her. And she said, no, I don't do 4 ounces. I barely do 3 ounces of water. I said, what do you drink? She said, coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I supplement that with Diet Cokes throughout the day. And that, in fact, was my lifestyle. And I spent 21 years on pharmaceuticals for anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
At no time did any of my psychiatrists or psychologists or therapists or medical doctors ask me that question. And it wasn't until I changed my relationship with food and went from 6 to 8 Diet Cokes a day, multiple cups of coffee during the day, which by itself can cause the anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't. The caffeine is a major contributor. But even more so important than that is that if you're not drinking water, your number one nutrient that the brain needs to be healthy, to be able to perform in its peak performance, is water. Water is a number one fuel that your brain needs to perform. So if you're struggling or suffering with migraines, depression, anxiety, just those 3 neurological disorders, there's a really good chance that you're not consuming enough water. And that's the first place I suggest that people embrace changing or committing to in their life. When I went from drinking less than 3 ounces a day of water up to half my body weight in ounces every day, my anxiety, that was chronic anxiety, dissipated. It dissolved. Now, it doesn't mean I don't have anxious moments. Of course I do, because I'm human. We all have those moments where we will get anxiety or stress, but I have ways to manage it now. One of them is I ask myself, am I behind on water today? How much water did I drink?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll usually find that I'll just drink more to help flush out whatever's going on from a neurological standpoint in my brain. And so that's just one example of how we can shift. I also want to invite you, Ev. I'm sure you may have some awareness of when individuals are diagnosed with a chronic terminal diseases. How can food be used as a gateway to reversing or putting into remission chronic or terminal diseases?
Yeah, and again, I don't think we have to look too far, my brother. And, I've had that first-hand experience. Obviously, I've shared my story over the last few years with my mum, having chronic diseases, type 2 diabetes, where she was on dialysis every second day for 5 years. I'd go up and visit her in the hospital. And it got to that point, before that, where she obviously started to feel some symptoms. The insulin resistance obviously went right through the gate. Then these things lead to high blood pressure. And then from that point, I think, one of the toughest things that I had to see with her was, she had a stroke from it. So this is the reality, my brothers and sisters. And the thing is that with my partner at the time, who was a nutritionist, we took her under our wing for a good 3 weeks while she came out of that particular part on her journey before she had to go on dialysis and all that sort of stuff. And we were able to lose 12 kilos in a matter of 3 weeks, my brothers and sisters. 12 kilos just from what she was eating.
Wow.
And then the story turned around. And this is not miracle work, but she was just fortunate enough that she actually got a kidney donation. But this is way too long after the event. So what really was the cause of all this? Well, my mum had a lot of deep trauma as a child. And like Jeff said earlier, we've got to go back and do this trauma work. It really is not about the food, my brothers and sisters. It's about the relationship that you're having with yourself. So when we can actually go back to those spaces where we may have suffered that trauma, where we may have suffered those abuses, and that's really causing these emotional eating and these disorders like the chronic diseases, etc., then we can really, as we always say, get to the root and be able to start creating a blueprint that is actually going to serve these people with these chronic diseases. I mean, it absolutely blows my mind, even through that experience with mum when we took her under the wing. You know, I was going to the neurologist and we were going up to the hospital and that. I mean, this just blows your mind, my brothers and sisters. They've got jelly beans at the front entry for people that insulin is just gone.
Wow.
This is what I'm saying, my brothers and sisters. We are in a system that does not serve your health. Your sickness is a business. And until we take ownership and we take responsibility for the stuff that we're putting into our bodies, then we're going to find ourselves in these places, my brothers and sisters.
That's true, Ev. I mean, I've spent some time in hospitals and at doctors' offices, and they're feeding the beast. They are not endorsing education. And I'm speaking in general terms. There are those that are outside of the box, but the majority of hospitals that I've been to, even when as an inpatient, what they're serving is not healthy food. I want to just share a couple of statistics here that are relatively new. These are just US-based statistics, but I want to share them just to kind of put this in its proper perspective. Since COVID began, this is research that was done and a couple of polls that were taken. This is current as of the end of 2020, so it doesn't include 21, which may have even progressed further. The US adult obesity rate stands at 42.4%, almost 43%. That's not overweight, that's considered obesity. That's the first time the national rate has passed the 40% mark. The second number I'd like to share is that about 74% of the United States population of adults are overweight, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The third number I want to share is that 10% of the US population have gained more than 50 pounds since COVID began. And of that, 61% say they've gained 29 pounds or more since COVID. So clearly, this is, I don't want to call it a pandemic, but this is clearly a huge issue. And I'm sure it's not just in the US. And so what it comes down to is, how can we break the chain and our relationship with food so that we don't abuse it and use it for self-soothing comfort anymore? And I'm speaking as a student and as a teacher. As I said, I was once fell into that category of obesity. And I'm happy to share just a couple of the shifts that I made in my life to help lose 60 pounds and reverse massive diseases to eventually come off of pharmaceuticals. The first thing I did was I focused on the type of food I was taking in.
Real quick, Jay, before you finish, I want to, for those that don't know your full story, because tonight's show hasn't expressed the gravity of your situation when you were at your worst. Jay, everybody out there, Jay almost lost his leg. Around that time, he was fighting for his life with blocked arteries, and his body was shutting down. Everything was so. When Jay talks about his experience coming back from that, this is a massive change. Sorry, Jay. I had to express how big your change was.
Yeah. Well,
it was incredible.
Here's the thing, Josh. When I hit my rock bottom, I was a fast food junkie. I spent almost 40 years in the restaurant industry servicing the QSR, what's called the fast food industry, quick serve. And there's nothing healthy there. And I got hooked on it. I was eating that food twice a day for over 3 decades.
Wow.
And at least Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, I was still doing drive-through for the kids because I was tired. Most of the time, I didn't want to cook, and that's what we did. And so for me, the first thing I had to do was I had to be willing to change my relationship with food and cut out the foods that were no longer serving me. What also helped me was having a partner that embraced health and wellness. It would have definitely been more challenging to overcome that if I was by myself. I know that. I'm not going to discount that for anybody that's single and living by themselves. It takes definitely more commitment and discipline, I believe, to change your habits. But for me, portion control was a big one. I basically took the serving plate and cut that in half. I went from a full dinner plate down to a salad plate. Second thing I did was I worked really hard at cutting out as much carbs as possible. Took out deep fried foods from my nutrition. Took out red meat. Took out pork, and eventually went from chicken and fish down to primarily plant-based today. I do seafood. I do wild-caught seafood. Pretty limited type of seafood. Nowadays, pretty much only when we entertain at the house. If we're having dinner by ourselves, typically it's plant-based food, except for typically after the show. Mary knows after a show, I want to engage or indulge in comfort food. But I've even changed my relationship with that, because that used to be, a quarter pounder with cheese and some fries, or chicken parmesan, or some really hearty Italian dish, Jeff Fasano. But for me, what comfort food today is a wild caught salmon patty
beautiful
in a lettuce wrap.
Nice.
That's comfort food for me today, and that's me changing my relationship with comfort. But I also think that a large part of the pivot is when you truly understand that food can nurture you, can nourish you, and heal diseases. I have a friend that chose to opt out of traditional Western medicine for prostate cancer, and he opted out of all treatment and decided to basically create a bubble for himself and spend 6 months to a year just focused on nutrition, reducing stress, removing himself from his corporate job, and just focused on healing. And he was able to come back to no evidence of disease in a very, very short span of time through nutrition and through reducing his stress in his life, but really using food as his fuel to save his life. And that, for me, was a very powerful story that helped me. Yeah, Katrina says the salmon patty, that's not a quarter pounder. No, it's not. But yeah, this is such a passionate subject for me, guys, because I had such a toxic relationship with food my whole life. Even as a kid, when I was skinny, I had very limited foods that I liked, and my dad wouldn't let me leave the table. He forced me to stay there, and it became a battle of will. Who's going to win out? And thankfully, my parents got a dog. So my dog got a lot of my meals that I wasn't going to eat. I just kept sneaking it down on the dog when Dad would come out of the room, and eventually come back, and the plate would be empty, and I didn't eat it. little mini schnauzer ate the food. Mom, if you're watching tonight, yeah, I'm sure you know that story.
Oh, how long did that mini schnauzer say mini?
Exactly,
Well,
right?
that's a good question. I don't. That's a great question. I don't recall. It's not that important. What's important is that I think our relationship with food, going from understanding, taking it from comfort, to seeing it as nourishment for the most important relationship that we have with ourselves is with our body. And part of our body is our mind, our brain. And when we're struggling with all kinds of neurological disorders, and we think our only gateway to feeling better is through pharmaceuticals, that's one option. But that's not long term. That's not going to serve you or I. I did that. It didn't serve me at all. It contributed to my body breaking down.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, I think the healthiest relationship that we can achieve is when we make conscious choices every time we go to put something in our mouth and ask ourselves, is this good for me? Is it going to harm me or help me? Is it going to be a blessing or is it going to be a burden?
Mm-hmm.
And that's beautiful, brother. That's where we go into mindful eating and intuitive eating. I was helping brother Josh, just start to date his food, start to communicate with your food, my brothers and sisters. Use your fingers, get in there and move around with the food, feel the textures, use your senses. Mindful eating is a big part of how I help people on their transformation, because you got to think of some of these habits. You might be eating particular foods like we've talked about tonight unconsciously in front of the TV. You might be eating certain foods at specific times that you aren't even aware that you're really having. You're just eating it for the sake of it. So look, mindful eating's been a big one that I've definitely helped people on. And that's just really getting back people more connected, like you're saying, Jay, with their body.
Well,
it was great.
How much?
Go ahead, Jeff.
How much do you?
Yeah.
It all comes down to this: how much do you love and care about yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Your body's part of that. We all want to work on our wounding, our traumas, our conditioning, and our programming, and we all do that. But a big part of this, and we're doing that. Why? If you want to get rid of it, that's not the why. The why is I want to learn how to love myself. I want to move through my stuff to really honor, value, and love myself. A lot of people in the quote unquote 3D spiritual world who are spiritual people are 75 pounds overweight. So it really comes down to how much do you love, honor, and value yourself? And part of that is what you're ingesting in your body. People forget about that. They just forget about, I want to treat myself well and this, that. Well, I'll treat myself well. I'll go get 4 quarter pounders and that will make me feel better. About really, as Ev said it at the beginning of the show, it's about our mind, our heart space, and our physical body. And our physical body is a big part of the transformation in self-mastery. And what are you putting in it? What are you ingesting in your body? And start looking at that way from a place of, oh, wow. Not, oh, I want to lose 50 pounds. You'll lose the 50 pounds when you start treating your body much nicer. But by ingesting healthy stuff.
Thank you for sharing it. If I want to ask you a quick question, any one of you guys can jump on it. Do diets work?
No. Can I say what? Can I give you a simple definition why they don't work?
Why?
Just look at the first 3 letters of that word, my brothers and sisters. So simple. That's why you've got to make this your lifestyle.
There you go.
Yeah.
It was a setup
And
question. It was a setup question I asked guys. Since I lost the 60 pounds, it's been many years now, and I haven't gained them back. For the first time in my adult life, I've been able to sustain the release of the weight. Now, I like to refer to it as I didn't lose weight, I released the weight, because I'm not out there searching for it. It's not like a lost set of keys or I lost my wallet and I'm seeking it. When the weight's gone, I've released it. It's gone. I have no intention, I have no desire to find it anywhere in the universe, because I know that it contributed to my health decline. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not, like you have, I don't believe that diets work. They're not sustainable, because unless you stay on that plan for the rest of your life, you're going to go back to resorting to the way your brain, the way you wired your brain or created the wiring in your brain around the relationship with food. The part about changing your relationship with food is changing how your brain is wired to the relationship with food. And understand that, for me, depending on what I eat or how much I consume, I may pick up a pound or two, but I then lose it right away. So I'm somewhere in that 148 to 151 at max, that 3-pound variance that will exist. But I have no intention in this lifetime putting back 40, 50, or 60 pounds. Because if I do, then it just means I'm that much closer to not being alive. And I love how I feel. And I love how when I look at a mirror, I like what I see today. I like how clothing fits me on most days.
Love it, brother.
And if I don't like the way it fits, then I change what I'm wearing.
There you go. There you go.
It has nothing to do with me. So as we approach, we're coming up to about 13 minutes before the hour. I want to switch gears here and take us into a wrap-up section of tonight's episode 80. Is food, when food strikes. What's tonight's topic again? What is Josh? This is your brilliant. When the fear strikes, the food spikes. Now we didn't.
And I got a new one just tonight. It hit me while we were in the show. We are in a waistbandemic.
Love it, brother. Love it, man.
We are in a waistbandemic.
So what I want to do is definitely, we didn't really talk about the relationship between fear, food, and why food spikes when we're in fear. We've alluded to it, but we really haven't gone there. And so for our wrap tonight, I want to invite each one of you to kind of break that down from your perspective of how can we regulate our emotions and our fear differently so that it's not entangled with how we eat or what we eat. And Jeff, I'm going to invite you to come in on this first and break it down for us from your perspective. When the fear strikes, the food spikes, knowing that, your relationship is a bit different. You tend to retreat, which I've met many people just like that actually go the opposite direction. When they're under stress, they tend to eat less. I, on the other hand, tend to consume more. Mm-hmm. But again, from your perspective, what is the relationship with the fear and stress and our emotions, and how can we break the chain to using food to fuel to try to calm us down?
Well, when we talk about fear, it's not the adult who is fearing anything. It's the programming and the conditioning and the wounded little boy or girl inside of us. So what's going on in the world today is feeding that big time. And And what's going on in the world today, a lot of it's based on life or death. So when the fear hits, it's really hitting our wounds. It's really hitting the little child in us. And when that happens, that little child is seeking comfort somewhere. They need to be comforted, to say, it's okay, come here. So that little child is looking for mom and dad. But as adults, mom and dad are not around. So we're seeking something, we're seeking that comfort. Instead of dealing with the feelings and nurturing through the feelings of whatever the fear is hitting and triggering, the first reaction is to find comfort somewhere. Many people find it in going and gorging on food. And if you really look at it, like I said earlier, what is the food that you're looking for? It quite possibly is the favorite food that you had when you were 15 years old. So that is really what is happening. People going to food for comfort, and it gives you comfort, as opposed to using your tools and nurturing yourself through the fear and becoming aware and conscious that, oh my God, I'm feeling these feelings. I'm feeling frightened. The fear is overwhelming. What am I doing? Oh, wow, I'm running to the refrigerator and I'm eating and I'm eating and I'm eating.
Yeah, love that.
It's about being aware of that. And then if you've watched 80 of our shows, going in, connecting with that wounded child and asking that child what they need right now. And it is not a Big Mac.
Beautiful. Love that. Jeff Fasano, breaking it down. Episode 80. Ev, you're up, man. Just mixing it up tonight.
You're up. I love the remix. Love the remixes, man. I got to use that, Josh, brother. I love that, man. Waste pandemic. Yeah, brother. And what a time for the waste pandemic, my brothers and sisters. And I'll quickly finish it on this note. You know, we've talked a lot about the comfort eating side of things. We are emotionally purging, my brothers and sisters, and a lot of that is coming from the lymphatic system. So you think this is a place where we're really housing our immunities. And a lot of that emotional baggage that brother Josh and Jeff and Jay have all spoken about tonight. So we've just got to become more aware and conscious. And, you know, some of the big questions that I get clients to really ask themselves, when you're becoming more aware and you're really observing some of these habits that may not be serving you within your life, ask some simple questions, my brothers and sisters. Ask, does this food make me feel lighter? Ask yourself, does this food nurture my body? Ask yourself, does this food free my body? Ask yourself, if eating this food, does it make me feel I love my body? You know, we're in a pivotal stage, my brothers and sisters, and we can really take back that power of all of these belief systems that have not served us up until this point, but specifically with our health and how we connect with our body. Because on the deeper levels of this consciousness, my brothers and sisters, we are literally just trying to lighten up this planet. And I'm not talking about the scales. The only scales you've got to worry about now, my brothers and sisters, is the scales of balance. So ask yourself the next time that you go and eat that processed food, whatever it is this food going to consume me, or am I going to consume this food? Let me say that again. Am I going to consume this food, or is this food going to consume me? And I'm going to leave it on that note, my brothers and sisters.
I love what Mary just said here. If it's not in the house, you can't eat it. Don't buy it.
Simple, not easy.
That becomes a conscious choice when you're in a grocery line. I can't tell you guys, even today, one of my weaknesses, if I may, are gluten-free chips. You know, they dip into a hummus or dip into a salsa. And I have to make that conscious decision in that moment. Am I going to indulge? Am I going to give myself permission to do it, knowing that if I say yes, then the next time I go food shopping, I have to commit to myself to say, no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's eating, embracing a healthier lifestyle of using food as fuel is really about making conscious choices for yourself. It doesn't mean that you have to feel like you're living in lack. It's okay to indulge once in a while. Now, someone like me who abused food for so many decades, people talk about one of the belief systems, you hear it all the time in this country, is you just eat in moderation. Eat whatever you want in moderation.
Yeah, man.
And my only explanation for me personally is I lost that privilege because I overindulged in very, very toxic processed food that was very inflammatory, that was a trigger for autoimmune disease just out of the gate, amongst many others that I was diagnosed with in 15. But Ev, I love what you shared tonight, and thank you so much for providing your perspective. Josh Richard, you're up, my friend.
Yeah, I wanted to close tonight with, where does our desire to comfort, Jeff was just talking about, or we're all talking about, where does that come from? For me, food wasn't my thing, but alcohol was, and it was something that I consumed to give me that comfort and to calm the beast inside my head. And then let's look into it a little deeper. What was the beast inside my head? Why did I need to comfort? Why did I need to numb? Why did I need to consume something to feel better, to create different feelings? That's what I was going for. I was uncomfortable with my feelings. And that was generally a negative narrative in my head and being really hard and critical on myself. And when I would screw up or when I would fail or say something wrong, I remember having a big presentation and I totally screwed it up. And I walked out of there and my body was just screaming. I just was screaming for alcohol to take that bad feeling away. And a tool that I've used, so I know that space very well. And it's not limited to food. It can be food, sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever. But that space, we can remind ourselves in that moment. And when a mantra I would do over and over and over again was to remind myself, this feeling is temporary and it will go away. It feels all consuming and we generally act in that moment. But it is absolutely temporary. Just as happiness doesn't last forever, this feeling won't either. And so that's the place that I know very well, and it works.
Beautiful. Love that.
Yeah, man.
Woo, woo, woo.
So it's safe to say that after this, I'm not going to go and eat a half a bag of Chips Ahoy.
Yeah, I've done that a few days. Well, those
are the college days.
Yeah, well,
yeah, exactly, right?
Dude,
I love Twinkies.
I've done it all, gentlemen, and then some. And I just want to take a moment here to really just speak to those of you, the viewers and listeners. If you heard something tonight that you like to love, please share it out on your social media page so that we can help grow our program organically. Each week we come in with a new topic, hopefully touching someone's life that needed to hear something right on time, your time, that changes the trajectory of your life. And I will say this, is that one of the things we didn't touch on tonight is the difference between alkaline foods or acidic foods. But I will tell you this, is that if you are in a terminal battle for your life, if I may, I really like to refrain from calling it a battle. But if you are in the throes of a terminal disease and prognosis, take out all acidic foods because you're feeding the beast, especially if it's cancer and or if you have some type of heart disease. When a doctor says to you, when the oncologist says to you, don't go plant-based because you're going to need all the weight to battle the chemo. Stay on that meat-based diet. I call BS on that. Now, I'm not a medical doctor, but I've done thousands of hours of research in my own healing journey to know that acidic foods basically is a fuel for disease. You need to take it all out. Go clean. Go clean, at least till you reach the point where you save your life. And get educated. There's so much education available today. Take the time to get educated. You don't need to go to the library. Just do some research, or seek out professionals who are trained in nutrition to help overcome disease. And with that, if you enjoyed tonight's program, you found value, we invite you to please consider donating on Venmo at Real Men Real Talk Live, so we can continue to bring this program and bring value to your life. And with that, I love you guys. We'll see you next week on episode 81, Real Men Real Talk Live. Peace and blessings.